Hello everyone, greetings of the hour. I'm Jolly Moncy. Today's topic is clause and its kinds. In this lesson, you're not just looking at different types of clauses, you're also looking at the precursor to know how you can transform sentences. The knowledge of clause and its kinds will help you with the advanced topics, that is the transformation of sentences, simple to compound, compound to complex, and so on, since it is purely dependent on clauses. Right? So by the end of this session, you will be able to understand what a clause is, different kinds of clauses, and how you can identify it in a given sentence. Okay? Now, each of the type of clause is discussed separately in the separate videos, because you know that it is quite vast, and of course it will help you understand each clause separately. So let's commence this session on clauses and begin with the noun clause. This session is all about clauses and its types. In this session, we shall concentrate on noun clause. This is the first part of the presentation. Before we move further, let us revise the difference between the phrases and the clauses. Now, if we concentrate on the clauses, we learned that clause is a group of words which has a subject-verb combination, has a complete idea by itself. A clause is a sentence in itself. It can stand on its own or depend on the other part of the sentence for its completeness. So, we have to concentrate on clause as a group of words, has subject-verb combination, and is complete by itself. In the previous slide, we learnt about the clauses and how to identify the clause. And we had learnt about one point where it mentioned that clauses can stand on its own or at times are dependent on the other part of the sentence for its completeness. Now, to understand it better, let's first know what kinds of clauses are there. So, clauses are of two types: independent or main clause, or dependent or subordinate clause. Okay, now what is an independent clause or the main clause as it is known as? Now, the word independent in itself should give you some idea about the clause. Independent means which can stand on its own, not dependent on anything else. So this is that part of the sentence, or so to say, the group of words with a subject-verb combination that can stand on its own. It doesn't require any more support from the other part of the sentence. It is complete in itself. So it is termed as an independent or main clause. Let's see the main points about the independent or the main clause. It says that it has a subject-verb combination, that is the subject and the predicate. Predicate includes the verb and the object, right? Then it will have one subject and one main verb. That means it will have the structure of SVO, where it would have one subject, one main verb, and the predicate or the object. It can stand on its own. This particular clause, that is the independent clause, is independent in itself. It can stand on its own. That means it can give you the complete meaning on its own. Example, she was singing. This particular sentence is a clause. It is an independent or the main clause. He went to the playground. This again is a good example of independent clause. Okay, he went to the playground. Here we have he as the subject, went to the playground is the predicate. That includes the verb and the object or the rest of the part of the sentence. right? So independent clause, as you understand now, is the main clause of a sentence which can stand on its own, would have one subject and one main verb, and would have the subject verb combination. Okay. Now, we come to the dependent or the subordinate clause. Now, this is something that you have to understand because it has got more points or more classifications, right? Dependent or subordinate. Now, the term in itself has more meaning to understand. Dependent is which is dependent on somebody, needs extra support from somebody to get the full meaning. So, this particular clause has some meaning in its own, is a complete sentence, that is with the subject and verb combination. Still it is dependent on the main clause or the independent clause to get the complete meaning. Let's learn more about it. Now you can see here that the dependent or the subordinate, as it is known as, clause is further divided into two parts. That is the coordinate clause and the subordinate clause. Okay, now here we have a clause divided into two parts, the independent or the main clause and the dependent clause. Now dependent clause again is further divided into two parts, that is coordinate clause or the subordinate clause. Coordinate clauses has subject verb combination, subject and predicate. Now this is a common sentence or the common structure in all the clauses, whether it is the independent or the dependent clause. Why? Because you have learned that clause is made up of subject verb combination. If there is no subject verb combination, we cannot term it as a clause. It would be termed as a phrase. Right? So if you, whether it is a subordinate clause, coordinate clause, or the main or independent clause, it becomes a clause because of the subject verb combination. So you will have this particular point common in all the three. Okay. Then coordinate clause can stand on its own. It, however, requires the main clause to complete the idea of the sentence. Okay, it is joined to the main clause with the help of coordinating conjunctions. Now these two things make it slightly different from subordinate clause. Okay, now we'll read that again. It can stand on its own. Independent clause also stands on its own, of course. So coordinate clause can stand on its own. It, however, requires the main clause to complete the idea in the sentence. Though it can stand on its own, still it requires the support of the main clause to give the complete meaning. That is the reason it comes under the dependent clause. Okay. It is joined to the main clause with the help of coordinating conjunction. It is joined to the independent clause with the help of coordinating conjunctions. Now, what are coordinating conjunctions? Coordinating conjunctions are those conjunctions, that is joining words that join the two sentences which are of equal value. That means if you keep it separately or read it out separately, it would still make a complete sense on its own. But if you join it together with the help of coordinating conjunction, it will give more meaning to the sentence. You get that? So coordinating conjunctions are those conjunctions that join the two coordinating clauses of the coordinate clause. Okay. Now, what are those coordinating conjunctions? It's very easy. With the help of this acronym, you would be able to remember it ever. Fanboys. Fanboys stands for the coordinating conjunctions. F for, A for and, B for but, O for or, Y for yet, and S for so. Now these are the coordinating conjunctions which are used to join the two coordinating clauses. Okay. Now example, she heard the news and She jumped with joy. Now, why I have put that she in brackets? Because I can omit that repetition of the subject, because the subject is the same. Now, when you have the subject as same in both the clauses, we omit the subject in the second part of it. Okay. She heard the news and jumped with joy. Okay. So here what has happened? She heard the news. We have one clause here. She, subject, heard, verb. So this is one part and it makes a clause. She heard the news. She jumped with joy. She, subject, jumped, verb. So what do we see here? We see there we've got two clauses and both can stand on its own if used alone. For example, she heard the news. That is complete in itself. It can stand on its own. Yeah. Similarly, she jumped with joy. Again, that makes a complete sense and it can stand on its own. Now, these two are of equal value, children. 1 plus 1, it is equal. Now, if these two clauses are equal, we join it with a coordinating conjunction to make it one sentence. Because we are speaking about one subject, we join it with the coordinating conjunction to give it a complete meaning. So she heard the news and jumped with joy. So after hearing the news, what did she do? So that is in continuation to the other part of the sentence, that when she heard the news and jumped with joy. So when you get this situation, where you see that both the clauses are equal in itself and can stand on its own, we can join that with the help of a coordinating conjunction. So that is the reason, even though it is dependent on the other, still we call it as dependent clause. Okay. Then we move on to the subordinate clauses. Now, this is a clause in a sentence which completes the subject-verb combination, yet it cannot stand on its own. Now, when you say cannot stand on its own, we have learned that phrases cannot stand on its own. But here we have the subordinate clauses, which though completes the structure of subject and verb, that is why it is termed as a clause, but it cannot stand on its own to give the complete meaning. Okay, so what do we know about subordinate clause? That it has got subject-verb combination, subject and predicate. It depends on the main clause of the sentence for its completeness. It cannot stand on its own. Coordinating clauses or coordinate clauses can stand on its own. Still, when you join it, it gives the completeness to the sentence. But here in subordinate clause, that it is dependent on the main clause, but it cannot stand on its own. Joined to the main clause with the help of subordinating conjunction. Now see here again, there is one difference between coordinate clause and subordinate clause. That coordinate clause were joined with the help of coordinating conjunctions, whereas subordinate clauses are joined with the help of the subordinating conjunctions. Okay. In coordinate clause, we have fanboys as the coordinating conjunction. Subordinate clauses have many subordinating conjunctions. That we shall learn later as we read about the other clauses. Okay. See the example here. Although I was scared, I crept in. Now, although I was scared, you have a subject, I, was is the verb, was is the verb there, and scared is the predicate part. That is the subject, verb, or subject predicate. So we have one clause here. Let's move further. I crept in. We have a subject and we have a verb here. So we come to know that we have got there two clauses. Now this sentence is made up of two clauses. Okay. So although I was scared, if you read it or if you say the sentence on its own, it would give you some meaning, but it would not be a complete meaning. Although I was scared. Although you were scared, what happened? Although I was scared, then what? Right? So there is again a question mark over there. We wait to get it completed. Okay, so what do we see here? The dependent clause, even though they have the subject verb combination, still they cannot stand on its own. That part of the sentence is dependent on the main clause. And what is the main clause here? As part of the sentence that makes complete sense on its own and can stand on its own. I crept in. I crept in is a complete sentence, a clause that is independent. So we term it as the main clause. Now this main clause is independent, can stand on its own, but the first part of the sentence, although I was scared, is dependent on this main clause to give the complete sense. So although I was scared, I crept in. So here we get the subordinating clause as although I was scared, and I crept in becomes your main clause. Look at the second example. The boy who was 10 jumped into the pond. Now the boy is the subject here. Who was 10? Now this who was 10 is talking about the boy. Though there is a verb, was is the verb there, who was 10. But what are we doing here? This particular group, even though it is a clause, it cannot be termed as the main clause because who was 10 cannot stand on its own. Okay, jumped into the pond. Who jumped into the pond? The boy. So we get the associated verb of the subject in the other part of the sentence. So if we join these two, we get the boy jumped into the pond. Now this whole part of the sentence becomes one main clause. The boy jumped into the pond. The subject verb combination. So when we join this particular part together, we get one main clause. So what is remaining? Who was 10? Now you have a subject who in the form of the boy. So we have used the word who to represent the noun or the subject, sorry, the boy. Okay, so who is the subject, was is the verb. So it is a clause, but what kind of clause do we get here? We get a subordinating clause or subordinate clause or dependent clause as it is known as. Okay, so if we say who was 10, you will not understand. Okay, why? What are we talking about? Whom are we talking about? But if we join it with the main clause, the boy who was 10 jumped into the pond. Or the boy jumped into the pond, the boy who was 10. So it is giving more information about the boy there. The boy who was 10 jumped into the pond. So we get the subordinate clause as well as the main clause in this. So going through this, you would have understood that the clause which is made up of two kinds, the independent clause and the dependent clause, is further classified into two parts, that is the coordinate clause and the subordinate clause. Coordinate clause is equal, still they are dependent on each other. That is why it is being classified under dependent or subordinate clause. And the subordinate clause is totally dependent on the main clause to get a complete sentence. It cannot stand on its own. So the main difference is that subordinate clause cannot stand on its own, coordinate clause can. Subordinate clause is joined by the main clause with the help of subordinating conjunctions, whereas the coordinate clause are joined with the main clause with the help of coordinating conjunctions. The types of clauses. Till now, you have understood what clauses are and the kinds of clauses. Now we shall learn about the types of clauses. The clauses used in subordinate clause are noun clause, adjective clause, and adverb clause. Okay, so just as we discussed the three important phrases when we dealt with the phrase, the noun phrase, the adjective phrase, and the adverb phrase. Similarly, in clauses, we shall discuss about these three important clauses in a sentence. Now, since this part 1 is all about noun clause, let us focus on noun or the noun clause. Now, if you remember that when we discussed the noun phrase, there were few hints, few tips that we had discussed to identify the noun phrase. Exactly the same tip would be required when you deal with the noun clause. Now here, instead of the group of words without a subject verb, we would focus on the group of words with subject and verb in it, doing the function which it is required to. Now, since we are discussing the noun clause, it would do or function just as a noun does. No, you know what noun is and what is the function of the noun. Similarly, we would have the group of words which would have a subject-verb combination, but that would be a part of the sentence that would be functioning like a noun. Okay, let's see. How do we identify the noun clause? We ask the question what to the verb. Now, this is the reason why I did phrase first with you children, because it is just similar to that of phrase. The topic that we did or the hints that we took for noun phrase, we would use the same for the noun clause. We had to ask a question what to the verb. Okay, so noun clause asks the question what, and the answer we get is something or someone. Okay, and very important, we ask question what to the verb of the sentence. You get that? For example, I don't remember when he came. I don't remember when he came. Now, what did I say? That we have to ask the question what to the verb. Now, before that, what is our first task? We have to look in for the clauses. Okay, I don't remember. I don't remember is one clause. When he came home is the second clause. Okay, now we have to identify which is the subordinate or coordinate clause or the main clause. I don't remember. If you say on its own, it stands on its own, right? I don't remember. So this becomes our main clause. When he came home. When he came home is the subordinating clause because it is dependent on the main clause. When he came is not giving you a complete meaning or sense. Okay, but if you join it with the main clause, it is completing its meaning. I don't remember when he came. Now, if it has to be a noun clause, what do we have to do? We have to ask the question what to the verb in the sentence. So what is the verb in the sentence? I don't remember. So we ask the question, what don't I remember? What don't I remember? That when he came home. That when he came home. I don't remember that when he came home. So this is the answer you get to the question what. What I don't remember? That when he came. So this is the noun clause. Similarly, it says ask the question to the verb I don't remember what. Right? And the answer you will get is when he came home. So this is the easiest way that you can learn the noun clause. Okay. Now, you know the simple trick how to identify a noun clause in a sentence by asking question what. Okay. But you also should know the different types of noun clauses that you can find in a sentence. There is no fixed structure of a noun clause. Suppose you just follow one set pattern, maybe there might be sentences which might be confusing, right? Because there are different types of noun clauses. So let's just go through it once to understand a little bit more about the noun clauses. The two types of noun clauses that you can find are the finite noun clause and the non-finite noun clauses. Now, why you should know this is because children, the structure changes with each change of the type. Okay, for the finite noun clause, you might have the verb and the structure of the sentence in a different way. With a non-finite noun clause, you would have the clause in a different structure. So that should not confuse you. Let's see what a finite noun clause is and what is a non-finite, right? So finite noun clause is usually it follows the subject. Usually the finite noun clause follows its subject. It contains a finite verb. Now, when I'm talking about all this, please understand that you should keep in mind the clause, the noun clause. That means it is containing the subject and the verb. Okay. So it contains a finite verb phrase functioning as a predicate. What is a predicate? Usually the object part of the sentence, isn't it? So it works, this finite form works as the predicate. That means the noun clause that you would see or identify in a finite type, you would be working or functioning as the predicate. Now, see, understand it with the example. Where my daughter hid the keys remains a mystery. Now, in this sentence, children, if we have to look for the main clause, it would be, it remains a mystery. That it is something that has been omitted. The subject has been omitted there. It remains a mystery. What remains a mystery? You know why I use the word what? Because that is the question you're going to ask to the verb remains. What remains a mystery? Where my daughter hid the keys. That is the answer you're getting. So where my daughter hid the keys becomes the predicate or the other part of the sentence. Okay. So where my daughter hid the keys is the noun clause. It is following its subject. And what is the subject? It. What remains a mystery? Where my daughter hid the keys remains a mystery. Okay, so don't get confused with that. Now you can see here, it remains a mystery. Now that is a complete main clause over there. Where my daughter hid the keys. Now where my daughter hid the keys is telling you more about the subject it. It is a mystery. What is a mystery? That my daughter hid the keys. So it here is the subject where my daughter hid the keys. It is something which has been replaced by the predicate part. Where my daughter hid the keys remains a mystery. It remains a mystery. What remains a mystery? Where my daughter hid the keys. So sometimes you do get these kind of sentences, children, which usually we don't use in spoken English, and therefore it takes time to identify the function that it is performing. But then again, children, the simplest of all, they can be such complicated usage of words or a group of words. Don't get bothered about that first. First, you focus on the simple things that have been taught. That means you need to first find out the main verb, right? The one that can stand on its own. Then you have to focus on the verb that it has been used there. And you have to ask the question to that verb. And the answer that you get in the remaining part of the sentence is your noun clause. Just that simple. Don't get caught up in the web of all the words that have been used there, children. No, that is the place where we get confused because we tend to focus more on what is written there. Okay, but what you have to work on is that the moment you get a sentence and you know that you need to find out the noun clause there, immediately you need to understand the requirements. You need to understand first that you have to identify the clauses from there, the two kinds of clauses, that is dependent clause or the independent clause. And you, more importantly, the independent clause, because from the independent clause you need to pick up the verb, right? And you have to ask the question to that verb. And once you do this step by step, you climb that ladder, you might as well see the correct clause that you are looking for. right? So don't get confused with all the jigsaw puzzle of the sentences or the words or the group of words here and there. Just concentrate on that. Okay. So here, see the next one. That's a very simple, clear thing. She told him that he is smart. Now, what did I tell you? That we'll go step by step. She told him. This is one part. She and told. You have the subject and the verb. She told him. It is complete in itself, right? So this becomes your main clause because it is independent, right? Now let's see the verb in that. The verb is told. That's the second step. Fine. Now after that, you need to ask the question to the verb. And what is the question? What? She told what? And the remaining part of the sentence should give you the answer to that. What? That he is smart. What? That he is smart. So that he is smart, he is. See the subject and the verb combination? That is also a clause, but it is a dependent clause. That he is smart doesn't stand on its own. No? So it's that easy, children. You need to practice 2-3 times. Pick up on 2-3-4 sentences. Try to analyze it. Divide it into parts of independent clause, dependent clause, and see the function that it is doing. It's quite interesting. If you keep doing that, you will soon realize that it's so easy. You just have to follow the steps. Okay. So she told him that he is smart. And there's a small hint over there, children. Whenever the sentence has that he is, that is usually for the noun clause. Okay. Usually, not always, because you're learning English. English is exceptional. Okay. But mostly. Okay, but don't bother about that. Just stick on to that question trick. Okay, so she told what? That he is smart. So here what do we have? A noun clause, that he is smart. Okay, now if you see the non-finite type, now you should know what non-finites are. Non-finites include the infinitives, that is to plus verb, the gerunds, that is first form of verb plus ing, which does the work of a noun rather than the verb. Present participle, again, first form of verb plus ing, which does the work of an adjective now. Okay, and past participle. So these are all the words that use the verb words, the action words, but they do not perform the function of the verb. Okay, take the example, to postpone the meeting at this point would be questionable. To postpone the meeting at this point would be questionable. So here we need to find out first and foremost the subject verb combination. Now when you see these kind of verbs used there all alone, all by itself, you should understand that it is because the subject has been omitted as there is already a mention of the subject before. Okay, would be questionable. It would be questionable. What would be questionable? It. What is it there? It is already mentioned there. To postpone the meeting at this point. So the subject is already mentioned. Therefore, to avoid the repetition, the subject is not being repeated. So otherwise we have a subject there. It would be questionable. It stands for postponing the meeting. And to postpone is the infinitive. You can see there. To plus verb. It is not functioning as verb. Okay. So we have the first step. We found the subject verb combination. It would be questionable. Okay. Now the second one. Verb, would. The third thing, ask the question what? What would be questionable? To postpone the meeting at this point. Noun clause. Simple. Got to the answer? Don't have to work too much on it. Don't keep thinking each and everything. Just these 3 simple steps. Give me any sentence. I'm ready for the answer. Why? Because I know that first I have to find the subject-verb combination. Second, I need to focus on the verb, right? Verb. And the third one, ask the question, what? To the verb. The remaining thing that comes as an answer is your noun clause. Let it be anything, infinitive, gerund, present participle, past participle, anything. See the other example. The teacher heard you singing in the class. The teacher heard you singing in the class. The teacher heard. Subject, verb. Yes? The teacher heard you. Now what is that? That becomes your main clause. Now, subject, verb, you have found out. Second thing, look for the verb heard. Right? That is the verb heard. Remember, singing without any auxiliary verb, if you use ing word, it will not work as a verb. Rather, it would be your gerund or present participle. So here it is not working as a noun. Rather, it is working as an adjective. Right? So you need to find out now the answer to the question what, because you have already found the subject verb combination, you found the main clause. From the main clause, you need to find the verb. You found the verb heard. Now ask the question what? The teacher heard what? The teacher heard you singing in the class. The teacher heard what? Singing in the class. And so that becomes your noun clause. So it can be whether finite noun or non-finite noun. The only thing that you have to bother are those 3 steps that you should keep in mind to identify and pick out the noun clause from it. Okay, children? And now we have the functions of noun clause. Now, the functions of noun clause would help you understand the ways in which a noun clause functions. This in turn would help you to understand the ways in which you can find the noun clause in, the structure in which you can find the noun clause in a sentence. Because it depends on the function of the noun clause that it changes its position in the sentence, right? So let's read it one by one, and I hope just by reading it and going through the examples, you will be able to understand it. And then secondly, children, we should not forget this golden rule that practice makes a man perfect. You need to practice even after listening to the explanation, after going through the examples, still you need to practice it once or twice, right? So let's go one by one and understand what does it say about the functions of noun clause. The first one is where the noun clause acts as a subject, right? So general sentence structure is subject, verb, object or complement. No, that is a general. Now what happens here? Note that the subject comes before the verb, right? So if the noun clause is working as a subject, then it will be before the verb. Simple, right? If you just follow the sentence structure, you will understand. If the noun clause is working as a subject, it would come before the verb, okay? For example, what he wishes is a cakewalk for him. Now, is the verb here? Right? So, subject would be before the verb. So, what he wishes is a cakewalk for him. So, what he wishes, what he wishes? So, what he wishes is a cakewalk for him. To leave the matter at this stage would be illogical. To leave the matter at this stage, which is a non-finite. Why? Because it is using the infinitive. Right? 2 plus verb. So to leave the matter at this stage would be illogical. What would be illogical? To leave the matter. So it is falling before the verb. So it acts as the subject of the verb. And therefore, the subject here is the noun clause, and the noun clause is acting as the subject in the sentence. Okay? Whatever it is, children, just understand that you have to ask the question to the verb. Okay. Now, if you get the noun clause as an object, then what would be its function? So as an object, the noun clause, the general sentence structure is again subject, verb, object, or the complement. So that note that the object comes after the verb, right? So if the noun clause is working as an object, then it will be after the verb, right? We are saying that noun clause will be before if as a subject, noun clause will be after if it's an object, but you should understand the function of the noun clause. You should understand what it is talking about. It is telling you more about the noun, more specific information about the noun. Okay, so example, I remembered what he wanted from me. I remembered what he wanted from me. Now, remembered what? What he wanted from me. So you can see here there is a verb remembered and the object, that means the action is passing on, and the action is passing on to the object, which is what he wanted from me. So that is the noun clause there, because it is telling you more about the noun. And what is that noun? He remembered something. What? He remembered what he wanted from me. I told you when I started the noun clause that the question would be what and the answer would be something or someone, right? So he remembered, or I remembered. Remembered what? Something I remembered. What is that something? That what he wanted from me, right? So here we see the noun clause working as an object. She claims to be an astrologer. It's a non-finite. Why? Because there is a be there. And be is the be form of the verb. You know what is the be form of the verb? Is, are, was, were. Yes? So these are all the are, am. These are all the be forms of the verb. So she claims. Claims is the verb there. So what do? We ask the question, what to the verb, right? Claims what? To be an astrologer. So what she claims? She claims to be an astrologer. She claims something. What is that something? To be an astrologer. So this is how you pick up on the noun clauses. Okay. Now, if a noun clause works as an apposition to the subject, and I had discussed it during the phrases session that what is an appositional phrase. But anyway, and I told you that usually the appositional phrases are found in the noun clause or noun phrase. Okay. So here, what is an apposition? An apposition is when you talk about the same thing in different words. I give you an example of apposition, not the noun clause here, but the apposition. What is that? Mahatma Gandhi, the father of our nation, is loved by all. Now you can see here, father of the nation. Now, whom does it refer to? Mahatma Gandhi. So they are the same thing. If you say the father of the nation is loved by all, we all know that it is Mahatma Gandhi. Or Mahatma Gandhi is loved by all, we know that he is the father of the nation. So when we are using the group of words to talk about the same thing, but in different words, then it becomes the apposition to the subject. Now here, because we are using the group of words, the group of words here to tell you or talk about the subject. And who's the subject here? Mahatma Gandhi. Then it becomes the apposition to the subject. Okay. Now, if the noun clause is working as an apposition to subject, then it will be soon after the subject. It will be soon after the subject. Subject and what you want to say about that subject. Something more about the subject, that would be your noun clause. Okay. So the suggestion that he should apologize was accepted. Now, what does it do? The suggestion was accepted is complete. The suggestion that he should apologize. Now, what is the suggestion? The suggestion was that he should apologize. So we are using it again. The suggestion was accepted was enough. But we are talking again, we are telling this about the suggestion. that he should apologize. What was the suggestion put by others? The suggestion that he should apologize. So that he should apologize is the apposition. It is apposition to the subject. That means it is telling you more about the noun, the subject there. What is the subject? Suggestion. And we are telling you that what was the suggestion, right? So that particular part would be your noun clause. You get that? So that is how you need to work on. Simply, the plan to distribute food to the poor was appreciated. Now, the plan was appreciated is fine. That is the clause, the main clause. The plan was appreciated, right? What was appreciated? If you ask that, you get the noun clause. But what are we doing here? We are looking at the noun clause that is working, functioning as an apposition to the subject. That is the reason why it falls just after the subject, because immediately after the subject is the apposition to the subject. Okay, because it is telling you more about the subject. Remember that. Okay, because there is another one coming up where it works as an apposition to the object. Okay, so when it works as an apposition to the subject, it will fall just after the subject. Just as in this case, the plan to distribute food to the poor. You are being informed about the plan. What was the plan? The plan was that we should distribute food to the poor. So the plan to distribute food to the poor was appreciated. Similarly, we continue, as I told you, as an apposition to object. Now, if you have a noun clause that is functioning as an apposition to the object, then how will it be identified? If the noun clause is working as an apposition to object, then it will be soon after the object. Now, remember when I are talking about subject, when you're talking about object, you should know the sentence structure, SVO. S followed by V followed by O. Okay, so object would be after the verb. Okay, now if the noun clause is working as an apposition to the object, you will have that after the object. Okay, now for example, the center has taken the decision to extend the lockdown. To extend the lockdown. The center has taken the decision. You have a clause there. Center has taken the decision. Okay. Now, taken the decision. The decision is the object. The center has taken is the verb and the decision. So, the decision is the object. Now, after the object, whatever falls is the apposition to the object in the noun clause. So here the noun clause is working as an apposition to the object, not to the subject. Okay. So here when the noun clause is acting as an apposition to the object, it will come immediately after the object because it is modifying, not exactly modifying, it is telling you more about that particular object. Decision. What is the decision? To extend the lockdown. So apposition, same thing. The center had extended the lockdown. We could say that, but we have said the center has taken the decision. And what is that decision? To extend the lockdown. So in other words, we have elaborated the decision there. We have told about the decision there. Okay, so that is the apposition. Same thing, but in different words. Okay, so that is the function of the noun clause. The center took the decision that the lockdown will be extended. This is another example, but with the same meaning. The center took the decision. Decision, object. Took what? Took the decision. So, soon after the object, that the lockdown will be extended is apposition. Apposition to the object. Okay, so you don't have to get confused with that. You just have to understand the functioning. Okay, now as an object to preposition. Now this is something different. If the noun clause is working as object of preposition, then it will be soon after the object. That means we have just learned that apposition to the object also will be soon after the object, and if it is as an object of preposition, again it will be soon after the object. But there is a small hint that you can get over there. He is interested in what his heart says. Now here the noun clause is working as an object of preposition. He is interested. He, subject, is verb, interested. Now he is interested. Interested in what? He is interested, or he is what? He is interested. We have got the answer to what? But then there is the preposition. So as an object of preposition, he is interested in what? What his heart says. So whenever there is a use of preposition, then whatever follows is your noun clause, which is functioning as an object of preposition. He is interested in what? What his heart says. The parents insisted on. The parents insisted, right? But then if there is a preposition used along with the just after the object, then it works. That means the noun clause is working as an object of the preposition. So the entire thing will be identified as the noun clause because it is functioning as a noun. Insisted on what? Meeting the principal personally. So you see here where we use the question what now? After the verb, but along with the preposition. Okay, the parents insisted. Insisted is the verb, and as the rule suggests, we need to ask the question what to the verb. Now here we have to include the preposition also while asking the question. Insisted on what? Insisted on meeting the principal personally. So that particular thing would be your noun clause. He is interested in what? What his heart says. Nothing has changed, children. So there is no change in the general fixed rule of identifying the noun clause. The only thing is that when you see a verb over there, you should try to be smart enough to understand that whenever there is a noun soon after the object, then that would be included with the verb to find the answer to the question what. Because we need to find the answer to the question what with the help of using the verb. Okay, and when there is a preposition used, just add it along with the verb. Insisted on what? Right? Interested in what? You get the answer. Everything remains the same. The only thing is, if a preposition is included, then you need to work accordingly. Okay, it's not difficult. Just relate it. Just walk in continuation. Just take the step one by one and add on to extra things that are coming in the way. Okay. Now the last one is as a complement. Now we are completing the sentence structure. Subject, object, complement. The common thing that remains there is the verb. Okay. So noun clause working as a subject, noun clause working as an object, noun clause working as an apposition to the subject, noun clause acting as or functioning as an apposition to the object, and then as a preposition, right? An object of the preposition. Now the last thing is the complement. Okay. General sentence structure, just now I discussed. Note that complement comes after the verb, right? Either it can be object or the complement. So if the noun clause is working as complement, then it will be after the verb, same as object. Right? The hint to identify the complement is that noun clause comes after the be form of verb. That is a simple example, children. If it is working as an object, it will be soon after the verb, right? But if it is working as a complement, then the structure would be slightly confusing because subject, verb passes on to the object. But in a complement, it may not seem so. So how do we identify that it is a complement or it is a part of the noun clause is just that simple, that you have to see that the noun clause comes after the be form of the verb. That means there will be maybe an is or are or was or were or am before that complement. Okay, for example, the news is that he has left the country. The news is the news is what? That he has left the country. The decision is what? To stay at home. Okay, the decision is, the news is. You can see here that after that there is no object, just as in the first place, or just as what we have done before. He said, or so to say, if we find out the example, the center has taken the decision. The center took the decision. So there is an object after the verb, right? Took, and it passes on to the object. But here it passes on to a verb. The decision is, right? And then rest of it. So it's very simple to understand whether it is a complement. And if it is a complement, children, you know that complement is the noun clause. Okay, because it is in place of object, you are using the complement. Okay, so the news is what? That he has left the country. The decision is what? To stay at home. Okay, so these are the 6 functions of noun clause. So according to the functions, it will shift its position in a given sentence. So what you have to understand is, wherever it goes, whether in the middle or at the beginning of the sentence or at the end of the sentence, what you should focus on is whether it has got a subject verb. If yes, it's a clause, right? Secondly, whether it is asking the question or whether it is answering the question, what? If you get that, you know that you have found your noun clause. Okay. Now, if you can just go through these simple functions of noun clause one by one and see the examples, I'm sure you would find it very easy. Okay. Well, students, this was all about the noun clauses and how you could identify that in a given sentence. In our next video, we shall learn more about the adjective clauses. Till then, take care, God bless, and happy learning.